there comes a moment in life when you realize that the pain you carry is not only caused by others, but by the meaning you give to their actions. Pain does not enter your life in a complete form. It does not arrive as a fixed reality. It is shaped inside you, quietly, through the meaning you attach to what happens. Two people can face the same words, the same situation, the same moment. Yet, one walks away unaffected, while the other carries it for years. The difference is not in the event. The difference is in the interpretation. When someone speaks to you with anger, the sound reaches your ears, but the wound is created in your mind. You begin to translate those words. You connect them to your past, your fears, your insecurities. A simple sentence becomes a statement about your worth. A careless comment becomes proof that you are not enough. In that moment, you are no longer seeing reality as it is. You are seeing it through the lens of your inner condition. If deep inside you there is doubt, then any criticism feels like confirmation. If there is fear of rejection, then even silence feels like abandonment. If there is a need for approval, then the absence of praise feels like failure. The outside world simply touches what already exists within you. It does not create it from nothing. This is why the same action can hurt you deeply one day and not affect you at all another day. Your inner state has changed, so your interpretation changes. When you are centered, grounded, and clear, you see things without distortion. Words remain just words. Actions remain just actions. They do not grow into something bigger because you are no longer feeding them with meaning that weakens you. Most people are not reacting to reality. They are reacting to their thoughts about reality. And those thoughts are often automatic, shaped by past experiences, by old wounds, by beliefs they never questioned. So, when something happens, they do not pause, they do not observe, they immediately assume, judge, and absorb. You must learn to create space between what happens and how you respond to it. In that space lies your freedom. In that space, you can ask yourself, is this truly about me, or is this my mind trying to turn it into something personal? When you begin to question your interpretation, you begin to loosen the grip of pain. Not every opinion is truth. Not every reaction from others is a reflection of your value. Sometimes people speak from their own frustration, their own confusion, their own limitations. But if you take everything personally, you carry burdens that were never yours to begin with. The moment you stop automatically believing your thoughts, you start to see more clearly. You realize that much of your suffering was created internally, not imposed externally. And with that realization comes a quiet strength, the ability to remain steady, even when the world around you is not. Power over your emotions is not something others take from you. It is something you quietly give away, often without noticing. It happens in small, subtle moments. Someone ignores you, and you feel disturbed for hours. Someone criticizes you, and it stays in your mind long after the moment has passed. Someone disapproves of you, and suddenly your confidence begins to shake. In each of these moments, the external event is brief, but the internal reaction continues. That continuation is where your power has been handed over. When your emotional state depends on how others behave, you are no longer in control of yourself. You are allowing unpredictable people with their own moods and issues to determine how you feel. This creates a fragile way of living, where your peace can be disrupted at any time by anyone. You begin to walk through life unconsciously, seeking approval, avoiding disapproval, adjusting your behavior just to protect your feelings. Without realizing it, you become controlled by the reactions of others. This does not mean you should become cold or without feeling. It means you must become aware of the difference between experiencing an emotion and being ruled by it. An emotion can arise naturally, but it does not have to define your state. When someone says something negative, you may feel a reaction, but what happens next is your responsibility. Do you hold on to it, replay it, and let it grow? Or do you observe it, understand it, and let it pass? Most people do not pause at this point. They immediately accept the emotion as truth. If they feel hurt, they assume something is wrong with them. If they feel disrespected, they assume they have been diminished. But feelings are not always accurate reflections of reality. They are often echoes of past conditioning. When you treat every emotional reaction as truth, you give others the ability to shape your inner world. Taking your power back begins with awareness. You start noticing when your mood shifts because of someone else. You begin to see patterns, how certain words, tones, or behaviors trigger you, and instead of reacting instantly, you create a moment of stillness. In that stillness, you recognize that you have a choice. You can either give energy to what happened, or you can remain centered within yourself. When you stop depending on others to feel respected, valued, or understood, something changes. You no longer chase their approval, and you no longer fear their judgment. Their words lose their weight because they no longer define you. You understand that your worth is not something that can be increased or decreased by another person's opinion. This is where true strength begins to form, not in controlling others, but in no longer being controlled by them. You remain steady even when others are not. You listen without absorbing everything. You observe without reacting to every impulse. And gradually, you build an inner stability that cannot be easily shaken by external behavior. Much of the disappointment you feel does not come from what people do, but from what you expected them to do. Expectations are often invisible, yet they shape your emotional world in powerful ways. You expect others to understand you without explanation. You expect them to respond with the same care you give. You expect consistency, honesty, and respect at the level you personally value. And when reality does not match these expectations, The gap between what is and what you imagined becomes the source of pain. The mind creates these expectations quietly. It builds an image of how people should behave, how situations should unfold, how relationships should feel. Over time, you begin to treat these mental images as if they are agreements with the world. But they are not. They are only preferences shaped by your experiences, your desires, and your personal standards. When others fail to meet them, it feels like a violation, even though no real promise was made. This is where attachment begins to form. You become attached not only to outcomes, but to how others see you, how they respond to you, and how they treat you. You start measuring your worth through their behavior. If they appreciate you, you feel valued. If they ignore you, you feel diminished. If they support you, you feel strong. If they doubt you, you begin to question yourself. Your inner stability becomes dependent on external validation. The problem with this is not that validation feels good. It naturally does. The problem is relying on it as a foundation for your sense of self. When your identity is built on something outside your control, it becomes unstable. People change. Their moods shift. Their priorities move in different directions. If your emotional balance depends on their consistency, you will always feel uncertain. Detaching from expectations does not mean you stop caring or that you accept poor behavior. It means you stop assuming that others must act according to your internal standards. You begin to see people more clearly without projecting your ideals onto them. Instead of expecting loyalty, you observe whether it is present. Instead of expecting understanding, you communicate and then accept what follows. This clarity allows you to respond wisely rather than react emotionally. When you release the need for validation, something inside you becomes quieter. You no longer seek constant reassurance from others. You no longer need their approval to feel secure in your choices. Your actions begin to come from a place of inner alignment rather than external acceptance. You do what you believe is right, not what will gain the most recognition. This shift creates a different kind of freedom. You can engage with others without silently demanding something from them. You can give without expecting something in return. You can walk away when something does not align with you without feeling rejected or incomplete. But your sense of self remains steady because it is no longer tied to how others behave. Over time, this detachment strengthens your inner foundation. You become less reactive, less dependent, and more aware of what truly matters. You stop chasing emotional security in unstable places and instead begin to build it within yourself, where it cannot be easily shaken. Most of the time, you do not see people as they are. You see them through your emotions and your hopes, your fears. You create an image in your mind, an idea of who they should be. And then you interact with that image instead of the reality in front of you. This is why you feel confused when their actions do not match your expectations. It is not because they suddenly changed, but because you were never seeing them clearly to begin with. Emotions can distort perception in subtle ways. When you like someone, you overlook their inconsistencies. You justify their behavior, even when it goes against your values. You focus on their potential rather than their actions. On the other hand, when you feel hurt or angry, you may begin to see everything they do in a negative light, even the things that are neutral or unrelated. In both cases, your vision is influenced more by your internal state than by objective observation. To see people clearly, you must first step back from your emotional reactions. This does not mean you ignore your feelings, but you do not let them control your understanding. You begin to observe patterns instead of isolated moments. You pay attention to what people consistently do, not just what they say or what you wish they would become. Actions reveal far more than intentions or promises. When someone repeatedly shows a lack of respect, it is not a misunderstanding. It is a pattern. When someone is inconsistent, it is not temporary. It is a reflection of their current state. When someone avoids responsibility, it is not accidental. It is part of how they operate. Seeing these patterns requires honesty, because sometimes the truth is uncomfortable. It may challenge the image you have been holding onto. Emotional attachment often makes you resist this clarity. You may continue to believe that things will change, that the person will eventually become who you expect them to be. But this belief is not based on what is happening. It is based on what you want to happen. And as long as you hold on to that, you remain vulnerable to disappointment. Clarity comes when you separate observation from interpretation. You see what is actually happening without immediately assigning meaning that serves your emotions. If someone does not make time for you, you simply recognize that they are not prioritizing you. You do not turn it into a story about your worth. If someone speaks harshly, you recognize their state of mind, rather than assuming it defines you. This way of seeing removes unnecessary suffering. You are no longer constantly surprised or hurt by behavior that was already visible. You stop taking things personally because you understand that people act according to their own level of awareness, not according to your expectations. As you practice this, your relationships begin to change. You become more selective with your energy. You invest in people who show consistency, respect, and clarity through their actions. You create distance from those who bring confusion or instability. This is not done with anger, but with understanding. When you see clearly, you move differently. You do not cling to illusions, and you do not ignore reality. You respond to what is real, not to what you hoped would be real. And in that clarity, you protect yourself, not by building walls, but by no longer being misled by emotion. Eornen peace is not something that appears by chance. It is something you protect, moment by moment, through the choices you make, the thoughts you entertain, and the boundaries you allow or enforce. Most people say they want peace, yet their daily actions move them further away from it. They engage in unnecessary arguments. They hold onto situations that drain them, and they allow every external disturbance to enter their mind without resistance. Your inner peace is constantly being influenced by what you expose yourself to, the conversations you entertain, the environments you stay in, the people you surround yourself with. All of these shape your mental state. When you remain in places that create tension, negativity, or confusion, your mind absorbs that energy. Over time, it becomes your normal. You begin to feel restless without even knowing why. Protecting your peace requires awareness first. You must start noticing what disturbs you, not just in obvious ways, but in subtle ones. It may be a certain type of conversation that always leaves you feeling drained. It may be a person whose presence creates pressure or discomfort. It may even be your own habits, overthinking, constant comparison, or revisiting the past. These patterns quietly disrupt your balance, and if you ignore them, they grow stronger. Once you become aware, the next step is discipline. You begin to reduce your exposure to what unsettles you. This is not always easy because sometimes what disturbs your peace is familiar. You may feel attached to it, even if it harms you. But protecting your inner state means choosing long-term stability over short-term comfort. It means walking away from situations that repeatedly pull you into negativity, even when part of you wants to stay. Silence becomes an important tool in this process. Not every situation requires your reaction. Not every opinion deserves your response. When you feel the urge to argue, to defend yourself, or to prove a point, pause and observe. Ask yourself whether engaging will bring clarity or simply create more noise. Often, silence preserves more energy than any explanation ever could. Detachment also plays a key role. When you are overly attached to outcomes, to people, or to how things should be, your peace becomes fragile. Every small deviation creates frustration. But when you learn to loosen that attachment, you create space within yourself. You allow things to unfold without constantly resisting them. This does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop forcing. As you continue this practice, you begin to value your inner state more than external validation or temporary satisfaction. You become less willing to trade your peace for approval, attention, or being right in an argument. You start choosing calm over chaos, clarity over confusion, and distance over unnecessary conflict. This shift changes how you move through life. You respond instead of reacting. You observe instead of absorbing. You let go instead of holding on. And gradually your inner world becomes more stable, not because the outside has become quiet, but because you have learned not to let every external disturbance enter and settle within you. And in the end, you begin to understand something. most people spend their entire lives chasing without ever finding. Peace was never in controlling others. Strength was never in winning every battle. Freedom was never in making the world behave the way you want. It was always here, within you, the moment you stop giving your power away. The moment you stop attaching your worth to others, the moment you see clearly, without illusion, you become untouchable. Not because life becomes easy, but because you become steady. People will still speak. They will still judge. They will still come and go. But none of it will reach the place within you that you have learned to protect. You will stand in situations that once broke you and feel nothing but awareness. You will hear words that once hurt you and remain calm. You will face moments that once shook you and stay grounded, because now you know nothing outside of you has the authority to control what is within you. And when you truly live by this, not just understand it, but embody it, that is the moment your life changes. That is the moment you stop surviving and start living with clarity, with strength, with peace. And that is the moment no one can ever hurt you again.